Gorgeous.
Thank you.
Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome to Terry Messenger's Genius Zone. And this is the place where we gather people's gifts and talents and we bring them out so we can add massive value to our audience. So, with me here, I have a beautiful lady. She is a coach. She is a lady who impacts a lot of people. I'm not going to steal her thunder, but I am going to introduce you and we are going to bring you some really exciting things. So welcome, Donna.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yep, so let's start with whereabouts are you?
So I'm based near Newcastle in the UK. Been here all my life. So just from a little small town.
Awesome, awesome. And I love the fact that, we are connected,
Yeah.
all around the world. So we can really, even though we're going through a world crisis, we can still connect with each other.
Yeah.
So, really what I'd like to do is, get you to tell the audience exactly what your specialty is. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and I always find that this is a question that really helps people to answer it in such an amazing way. So, if I put you on the spot for $1 million and said to you, I want you to state what you are the best, like you believe you are the best in the world at, what would it be?
Oh, that's a really that's a really put on the spot kind of question. I would say I am the best at really listening and getting to the deeper root of what's really going on with somebody. There's kind of a lot of that surface stuff that we tell, but it's kind of seeing those signs and noticing those language differences and things that tell us there's something more going on underneath. So I think I'm really
Oh,
good at
yes.
digging deep and really understanding what the issue is.
That is so, so good. And, it's just so powerful because how many times do, we as coaches that practice such powerful modalities find ourselves, speaking to people, but really what they are saying is the problem is quite often just superficial. Like they'll be talking about, the fact that they are, constantly arguing with their husband, or they're not really feeling good at work in their job, or they feel bad about their body. And really what's going on is way underneath the layers.
Yeah.
So perhaps maybe what we can do is if you were going to teach someone to get to the bottom of someone's issue, what would you tell them? Because we do have a lot of coaches and leaders and healers that do tune in. And even though this has gone to YouTube, so it's not on Facebook, we will put this to Facebook. So I would like you to kind of like just, if you could give a couple of your best tips about how you get to the bottom of your clients' problems, what would you say is your true magic?
So I'd probably say that the first part of it is asking the right questions at the right time. So, quite often we go into a whole story and we get lost in the context of what's going on. And so if we allow, I know the idea of interrupting somebody doesn't always feel good, but I think quite often they kind of live in that story. And if you allow them to kind of follow that same route every time, you'll never find new information. So sometimes it is pausing them in certain places and asking the right question that will dig a little bit deeper, really listening to the language that they're using. So whether it's in kind of past tense and present tense, or, there's so many parts to it, because there's also that part of really watching what the clients do. We know there's so much of the non-verbal communication. So, you quite often see clients going, I really feel like that. They're telling you no. Or asking where they feel something and them going, I really don't know where I feel that. But you're getting those signals from somebody all of the time, and it's being really tuned in to the fact that the words that they say are little of the communication that's actually happening within that conversation.
Absolutely. I cannot agree with you more. People don't even know what they say.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I teach is in the first level of communication is the power of influence. And you would know all about this, Donna. And that is where you are actively listening to the person by clarifying what they just said. So, by listening to their words and actually playing it back to them, it's really mirroring to them what they are saying. And even when you said, I don't know where I feel that in my body, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting that I wonder what would happen if you turned around and you said to them, I wonder if you're feeling it in your upper chest area.
Yeah.
I wonder if, it's sitting there and it's blocked. And that's when they think you're a psychic. Yeah. Because they go, how did she know that? And it's interesting that when you even say their words back to them and they don't remember what they just said, they think, wow, she's amazing. Yeah. She knows exactly what I'm thinking. Yeah. So, Donna, I know everybody's got a really epic story, like when you think about people like Oprah Winfrey, and people that really make a stand for what they're doing, especially in human relations. Usually they have a story. They have something that is really moved and shaped them. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an example on this. But I know that when I first came on board, I was actually prompted by my husband, who I wasn't married to at the time. And he said to me, this is going to be something that's going to really help you to become aware of yourself, your problems. I had a marriage breakdown. I was not working. I literally had nowhere to live. And I had a really damaged kind of heart and also damaged ego, because I felt that I'd lost a lot of people at that time that were around me, and I was stuck in my story. So I never imagined in a million years, because I was always I grew up quite, with a lot of wounds. I did a lot of compensation. I knew how to hold myself confidently, because it was kind of like something I needed to learn. But then when I came in 2006, and learned how to change my whole life around. I mean, it was absolutely profound. And, it really took me through being able to just unpack the layers without the story. Yeah. Just going into the emotions, just releasing the old triggers, being able to also, which I found very powerful, step into the shoes of other people that were hurting me and that I may have victimized myself. And it's interesting that when I was able to perceptually shift the way that I thought about the situation and look through their eyes, I just suddenly, I was expanded and opened up into a whole new world. So, I literally went from this very depressed state of anxiety, of not knowing who I was, riddled in self-doubt, no self-worth, to this very, very empowered human being. And I, even at the age of 40, grew 1/4 centimetre, because my husband, being a chiropractor, said that my spine, because I held my posture in a completely different way, that actually helped it. But my eyes also slightly changed colour and became a shade brighter. And yeah, because there was just, it was like I removed the fog, you know, and this cloud had lifted. So I cannot express. And as a result, I stepped into my zone of genius, hence this podcast.
Yeah.
And my passion, right? I stepped into my zone of genius, and that is my zone of genius, you know, helping other people to break free of their sabotaging patterns and their old stories. But the thing that really gave me my burning passion is that I discovered that when people really unlocked their hurt, their pain, and their story, they suddenly came into their glory.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, you know, like, so that was a little bit about my story. So now what I do is I activate people's success, and I activate it through their zone of genius. And, you know, for me, you know, and you would know this too, a lot of the, you know, a lot of the healing of wounds and helping them is the easiest part. It's actually getting people to recode themselves. So, yeah, so tell me about your story, Donna. What is really the undergirding passion behind, you know, why you became a coach?
Yeah, I think it's when I was hearing your story there, I think I realized that mine happened. It kind of started a long time ago and it's gradually grown. So in my teens, I suffered from depression. I worked for a mental health charity for 20 years. And I kind of got into the real part of my journey probably around about 2007, when I had what was initially kind of just routine bowel surgery. I didn't heal well from it, ended up getting rushed back into hospital with an abscess and infection, and was really, really poorly, and ended up with a temporary ileostomy, which was like the kind of the worst fear I'd ever had, and come face to face with it. And I think that was the moment where things were like, one life could have been so short. And, you know, it kind of made you realize that, you know, you needed to do something different. And I think coming face to face with your worst fear, because I've had bowel problems since I was in my late teens. And I think at that point it was like, if I can come like face to face with my worst fear and survive that, then I can pretty much do anything. And I felt like for so long, felt really just like I could take on anything. And I was really excited to do things. The bowel problems I'd had before really held me back. So it was like a whole new lease of life. And that's when I got into the world of NLP and hypnotherapy, and that honest communication that we learn with ourselves. There was a lot of that you were talking about really getting underneath of, you know, like, why do I feel like this? Why am I saying this? The interaction with other people. It really transformed how I thought about myself, how I interacted with people. Definitely put some boundaries in place that people didn't like. And kind of fast forward, there are other points along the journey, like going through IVF and that not working, getting divorced, and then being with somebody who ended their life through suicide, and then ended up with an abusive relationship. So there's all these kind of things that now, over the last sort of 3 years, I've really spent a lot of time healing those wounds, realizing why I was kind of following the same patterns of behavior, ending up in the same kind of relationships.
Yes.
And just like feeling now more than ever before that everything's now just come together. The learning, the understanding, the acceptance and forgiveness. And a lot of that, you know, was kind of shame and guilt I've maybe carried around myself, as well as, you know, forgiveness of what other people have done. I'm not in control of other people's behavior. And releasing that need to feel like it's our fault. So it's kind
Absolutely.
of separate that out. And, you know, we all make our own decisions, and they're right at the time that we make them. And yes, hindsight's a wonderful thing. We can look back at things and say, would I have done that differently? And actually, I'm in a place in my life that I look back and I go, I wouldn't have done anything any different. I would have made the same choices in that moment because they were the right choices for me. and I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't have those things in my life.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about that, where there's absolutely no regrets. And listening to your story and hearing how you have been on the brink of death with your health, and feeling that way, and feeling so I guess compromised in your energy and what you went through, to actually going through the crisis with losing a partner to suicide, and growing up with many of the things that you had to deal with growing up. So I always say to my people, it doesn't matter how bad life has been or what it's thrown you. Sometimes the bigger the adversity, the greater the university. Like you can really thrive rather than just survive. And you can actually thrive through some of those things that a lot of people can't feel like they can often survive. So this is where I often say to people, what if you were told that your life was a story and everything was mapped out? And this is where I really love helping people to step into their zone of genius, because this is why I always love asking people on this show, what has been one of your biggest challenges, and what has been your ultimate passion? Because quite often what we discover is it is what the person has been through in their own life, when they have actually drawn a line in the sand. They have made a decision, like at your level, made a decision, I am not going to do this. And you may not be at Donna's level if you're watching. Maybe you're at a higher level, maybe you are not at the level that Donna is at. And if you're not at the level that Donna is at, if you're struggling, you can know that both Donna and I have been through so much. And this is such a huge part of what I tell people. What if I told you that everything that's happened to you has happened for you? But not only that, it goes one step even bigger than that. It gets even more expanded. And Donna, you're in this position. You are a classic example to viewers that are going to listen to this podcast and that are going to tune in. And that is that, what has happened to you in your life is for the greater good of others. It's actually, you have been anointed. This is what my belief is with your zone of genius. You have been anointed and appointed to have gone through what you've been through so you can be a light to others. So tell me, what would you say, like someone out there that's suffering, and, let's just allow you to put yourself into a position where you're talking typically to either one of your favorite clients or, someone that you tend to attract. So they have like specific issues. What would you say to them if you could be really speaking into their life, perhaps like putting forward maybe 3 secrets, strategies for their life? What would you tell them?
I think probably the first is to know that it's temporary, because I think having had multiple things happen, it wasn't just one thing and you get through it. Multiple things happen, and when you're really in that, we don't think it's ever going to end. We don't see a way out of it. But that, for me, that understanding and that awareness that state is temporary. There are things that you can do, definitely reaching out to people, whether it's friends, family, coaches, therapists, whoever it is, but get the support you need as you need it. Don't sit alone with these things. I think that's one of the things that I tend to find is the clients I work with have an awareness, but they're trying to do it on their own. And it takes us so much longer to do something on our own. Because
Oh,
as
yeah.
you said, that idea that somebody really hears and listens, like I journal a lot and I read back through it, and it's not the same as speaking to somebody and having them hear your words. And as you say, sometimes you don't even know you said something and somebody says it back and you go, that really what I said? Like that's
Did I
not...
say that?
And then we explore that deeper, and so we can understand whether or not the things that we're saying, that we are feeling, there's that element of having validation. You know, sometimes the people around us don't understand that we need to repeatedly talk through the same thing, or you know, we need to, like I have a thing where I know I talk to multiple people because I like different perspectives, and I love the fact that it really makes me see things from lots of different angles. So talking it through, knowing that it is temporary, and having that belief in yourself, that you, like for me, the biggest thing has been, and the work that I do with my clients, is really staying true to yourself. We get conditioned in so many different ways and get kind of deviated from our path. So when you talked about the fact that there's more than us in terms of the direction in which we're heading, the kind of the life journey that we're on, but there's so many things that distract us from that along the way. And it's really important to stay true to ourselves and find ways in which we can do that. I know through my own journey and through the clients that I've worked with, we get to places where we don't recognize ourselves anymore. And then we have to kind of unpick all of those things. It makes the journey feel even longer when we're then having to... I always describe it as kind of like if you're going along a path, sometimes you have to sit down and you have to, like, you know, take everything out of the bag again, and you know, and realize sort of, you know, what you've been carrying around, and if it's yours, or somebody else started putting things in the backpack along the way, and you know, it got really heavy, and you know, we need to unpack that and really look at what's our own stuff and what's other people's things. And that for me has been the biggest part of the journey, of that release and letting go of some of those things. I can remember recently having a conversation with somebody and said, oh, but that's just who I am, and then going, or who I've been led to believe I am.
Yes.
And then realizing actually I'm not that person at all. I've been that person to survive in different ways, in different relationships.
Yes. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in fact, you know, some of our greatest gifts can be that element of where we learned how to do things to survive. So what I'm really hearing from you, Donna, that I would really like to reiterate to our audience is, and I'm going to totally just paraphrase this, but I heard it actually said in one of my women's circles actually just recently: know thyself, right? And when you come to know thyself, it's really an important part to be able to also embody that if you are going through something, then, you know, that's okay. It's okay, but find that support. Have that support. So those are the two things: know thyself, make sure you get support. But I love this one. So I'm going to say the third one, and I'm going to paraphrase it, because, you know, one of the things that I love doing is I love listening to people and designing their programs. So I'm kind of like, I'm constructing a whole program here while I'm listening to you for just someone like yourself. The third one is to know the difference between your baggage, and I love that Donna said this, and somebody else's. Is somebody else, have they been loading your backpack with their shiz? And this is I think this is huge, like, you know, and really because you know, a lot of the work that I do with the subconscious is so much to do with your imagination. So we say that, you know, problems are really just problems of imagination, because get rid of the junk. So get rid of the junk in the trunk and know the difference between what belongs to you and what belongs to others.
Yeah.
So that, what an amazing, you know, really what an amazing analogy, Donna, that you've put forward here. So tell us, do you have a program, and how do people join you?
So I work in a very bespoke way, one-to-one, and I only ever take a handful of clients because I love to be able to really give each and every client that individual attention. So I've just opened up just a couple of spaces, and it's really bespoke, as I said to them. So it's a kind of a blend of personal therapy, business coaching, and accountability support with, you know, as much hypnotherapy and NLP gets thrown in there as well. And it's worked on with the client a length of time that, you know, they want that support for. So it could be as they're going through a launch of a program. It could be that they're realizing they, you know, kind of heading down a path they've been deviated off, and they want some support to get some clarity and focus back where they're going. So it is really bespoke, and I usually take on people via just having a one-to-one chat with them. Do a little bit of coaching so that we can see if we're a really good fit. Because obviously when we're making kind of investments into really working on ourselves, we want to be working with people we really trust and can build that relationship with. So it's, you know, it's all done very, very simply with just, let's get on a call and let's discuss, you know, what you're looking for. I'm very open. If I can't help with that, I will, you know, I'll let you know. But yeah, it's just very much, I tend to support, I've been working with a client now for 2 years. I'm supporting her through the kind of the growth of her business as she scales. There's realizing all of those different things come up for us along the way. And things that we think we've worked on quite often, we maybe didn't quite deal with it at the point. So, and I think just being there as a cheerleader and supporting them, you know, really knowing, clients get to really know themselves, so they know the things that trigger for them, like particularly launches are usually, a lot of the clients that I work with are quite introverted, so when they have to have it switched on all of the time, it can be very draining. So we do a lot of support work around that, around the kind of things that come up for them, as well as managing their energy throughout, and then kind of debrief and, you know, review and reflect on what's worked really well, what would work better next time.
That is amazing. So how can they get in touch with you, Donna, if somebody wants to chat to you?
So you can email me directly at donna@donnaliddle.com, or I am on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram's probably the place I hang out the most, and it's just at Donna Liddle Coaching, and it's the same for Facebook as well. But Instagram's probably the easiest, that, or email at donna@donnaliddle.com.
Beautiful. Well, Donna, thank you so much for your share, and it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on board here. And, you know, you are definitely a very great example and a light to people to say, well, you know, Donna's been through everything that she's been through, and now she has channeled all of her experiences and all of, you know, what she's come to learn into helping others. Yeah. Maybe that's you. So thank you so much, Donna, for your time. And yes, and I will, and I would love to chat to you. I'll chat to you after this, and stay on board, so that when we leave the studio, what we'll do is we'll have a chat. And thank you again, and I look forward to hearing all about your future clients and more stuff that you are doing with them and all the things. So I'll see you soon.
Right.